let's go into it. So this morning I spun up a blank Rapid site. So this is Rapid, it's completely blank. The only things I've done to it is I created this leads table and I've created the tasks module. The tasks module is based off our out of the box product, and I've sort of just copied it from there and just chucked it in here. Now, the purpose of this demonstration is not to show you guys how to make tables or anything like that. That would be a designer workshop, but this is a workshop specifically on workflow. So I've done a lot of sort of the infrastructure work around it already, and now we're going to get into the workflow side of things. So what type of workflow am I going to try and create today? So most businesses, they get leads or generate leads in some sort of way. So I've created this lead form for a fake company called Acme Corp. Essentially, the goal would be that Acme Corp's customers fill in this lead form, whether it's served to them through a website or through some sort of marketing campaign or whatnot. They fill in this form, and by doing so, it will create a lead in their Rapid system. After the lead is in their system, we want the workflow to trigger off that. So we want the lead to be created, and then we want some tasks to be generated for the sales team. We want an email to go to the lead saying that, a confirmation email saying that we've received the information and that a salesperson will come back to them shortly. And we also want to put in some handling around what happens if the sales team tries to contact the lead and the lead didn't pick up. Like, is that task just done, or are we going to then get the sales team in a month or so or a week or a couple of days to try and recontact that lead? And then after that, we're going to update the lead with a close date so that we can see it all in our reporting, and then we're going to finish the process. So it's a pretty small process, but it's a good one to get started on, and just to show off some of the aspects of workflow. So pretty much we're creating the leads process. After we get the lead, what are we going to do with it? So first, let's try and create a workflow. So to create a new workflow, you go down to the workflow tab down the bottom. So we got Explorer, Workflow Designer. So we're going to go to the workflow tab. Now what I want to do is I want to create a new one. As you guys can see, I've already created one called New Lead Process because I tested it out this morning, make sure everything works, but we'll just do another one called New Lead, name it something different, and create. Great. So that created it, and now you click on it to open it, and now we're in our BPMN diagram. So workflow uses BPMN, which is a business process management notation, or I might not be getting the acronym exactly right, but it's pretty much a notation that is publicly available that anyone can use to be able to map out their different processes. What Rapid's done is we've grabbed that mapping tool and we've actually made it executable. So in other words, the computer can do some of the tasks rather than you just mapping it out and having a pretty diagram at the end. The diagram actually serves a purpose and allows you to automate different tasks, allows you to set different tasks, puts things on timers, allows you to update items, create items, delete items, all that sort of stuff. And this is sort of where the magic starts to come in, and that's sort of what Rapid's done with it all. Now, what we wanted is we want this process to trigger off the creation of a new lead. This white circle here is called a start event. So what we can do is we can press on the spanner, and currently it's configured to a manual start event. So the only way to trigger this process would be to click launch, or there are other ways in the Rapid system, but pretty much just clicking a launch button or manually triggering it in some sort of way. We don't want that. We want this process to automatically trigger off the creation of a lead. So what we can do is we can click the spanner, and then we can go to conditional start event. Signal start event, that's the one, a signal start event. And then we want to choose the table. So in other words, these are all the different tables in our Rapid system, and we want to go to leads. And when do we want it to trigger? We want it when a lead is created. And then we can hit save. And what I'm going to do for now, just to make sure this bit's working, is I'll just create a task off it and then an end event. And this is just to make sure we got a process that actually works. And I'll save this quickly, and I'm going to use the new lead form to create a new lead. Now, it auto-fills because I've already filled this in a couple of times while during testing. So we got Frank Sinatra as a new lead. The email, because I'm logged in with my automation at demorapid.onmicrosoft.com email, I'm just going to be using that one just so I can show you guys that the emails that the lead would receive as well, and so that I don't have to be juggling between 3 or 4 Microsoft accounts, because I'm sure you guys know how difficult it is to be logged into multiple at once. So let's create this new lead and submit. Great. So that's all submitted. And now if we refresh this, we can see that there has been a new lead created and from the company Music Records, which is Frank Sinatra. And then what we can see is it's gone green. And so the token, so this green means that this is executed, and the token is essentially what you can imagine moving between the different elements. The token has left this element because it's green, and it's currently sitting on this element. Okay, so it's started, and now the token's sitting on this user task over here. What we can do is we can actually click into the signal start event, and if we go to workflow results and output, we can see all the different information that was submitted based on that lead. So this is all the information associated with that lead. So we can see the first name, Frank, last name, Sinatra, and we've got a system field in there that automatically combines the two to make Frank Sinatra. We got his mobile number, 123456. We got the status. It automatically, because the way I've set up the form, it'll automatically in the back end add the status of new. And we've got his lead submission, which is I would like to work with you guys. That's great. So all of his information has come across successfully into the Rapid system and triggered off the process, which is good. Now, the first thing we wanted to do is, okay, we know the process is working. We know that the triggering is working. We want to send an email, a confirmation email to the lead so that Frank Sinatra is not left hanging and actually knows that we've received it. And he's got a record of the fact that he's tried to contact us with the details that he submitted. So what we can do is we can change this into a service task. So the difference between a service task and a user task, in a service task, you always know it's a service task because of the cogs. A service task means the computer's doing the task. A user task, on the other hand, just made it disappear. Let's put it back in. A user task, on the other hand, which is denoted by the symbol of the person, means that there's a task will get created in the Rapid system and requires a person to do whatever the task is. And we'll be configuring a user task later on, but at the moment we're just going to be doing the service task. And then, so what can we call this service task? If I press E on this element, it lets me title the element. And so we might just say confirmation email to lead. That's all we want to do so far. It gets triggered, we send an email to the lead, and then it ends. Great. So now I need to do some more configuration though. So what type of service task do we want? There's a whole bunch of different ones that do different things. You can do ones that, for example, will fill in documents. So you could have different Word and PDF templates that we can automatically fill in and generate that and then share that with people. Other ones is going to be things such as creating other Rapid items and getting Rapid items, but we want to send an email. So we want to send an email message. And the type, we're just going to use HTML for now, and it's going to be sent from automation. So it's actually going to be sent from the user I'm currently logged in as. Now, one of the things to note that for you to send the email from this automation user, it means that the automation user, number one, has to be in your tenant. It can't be an external user. And this might be getting a little bit technical, but they also need to have the permissions of the tenant set up to be able to send email. So in other words, you guys have got your little Microsoft tenants, and that's what all of your users in Microsoft or accounts are managed through. If you haven't given Rapid permission to be able to send emails, then obviously it won't work because you haven't given it permission to send emails. And the last thing is that user actually has to have a mailbox set up. So that user has to be a licensed user. They actually have to have an Office 365 account with a mailbox. As long as they've got that, then it will send. Now you can get $8 ones, which just lets you use Office Online. That's fine. Or you can get like $20 ones, which lets you use all the desktop applications and whatnot. And it doesn't matter which one it is, as long as they have a mailbox associated with their user, that's fine. Now, we want to send the email to someone. And I could, for example, look at the details, and I could hard code in Frank Sinatra's email, but I don't want to do that because we want it to be dynamic, because otherwise it's never going to work after the first run through. So the way we can do that is we can use something called a data can. So this over here is called a data can. And what I'm going to name the data can is lead. Essentially, what we can do with this data can is we can make a connection between this data can and then we can actually make a connection to the lead that was created. So this data can will always show the properties of that lead. So if that lead is updated and the status changes from new to converted, this data can will always reflect the current properties of that item. And that means that we can hook into that and reference this data can rather than hard coding in information. And the way we can do that is, so at the moment, we've called it lead. And what we want to do is which lead do we want it associated with? We want it associated with the lead that was created. And we know which lead was created because if we go to the start event, workflow output, we can see that, again, this is information from the lead that was created. Now the system, when it creates a lead, it creates a new unique ID. In this case, the new ID is 5. So that means if we go to the leads table and we go to lead with the ID of 5, it will be Frank Sinatra. So what we can do is we can reference this field dynamically. And the way you do that is, do we see how it says int there? That just means the data type. If you click on that, that will actually copy the string that you need, which references this value dynamically. So if we go over to this lead and we go element, and then we choose an entity, again, this is just going to be the table. So which lead do we want to be connected to? And what's the ID of that lead? We can put in 5 here, but that's not going to work for the next one. That thing I just copied to my clipboard, if I paste it in, this is a dynamic templating language. So this essentially means that this will resolve to whichever lead triggered the process, if that makes sense. Now, I know a lot of information has just come up, but does anyone have any questions at the moment?
This is all making sense. Thanks.
Cool. All making sense.
The only one other thing that I can think would be good for context is just showing the lead that was created in Explorer as well.
Yep,
because
we
obviously
can do that. So the lead that was created in Explorer was this lead here. And if we open this lead, so this is Frank Sinatra, we can see that his ID in the system is 5, and you can see that in the URL as well. Awesome. Great. So now what we want to do is if we save this and then we can see where it's up to, what we can do is this data can's got nothing in it at the moment, and we want to actually see the information in the data can so we can take his email out and put it into the service task. What we can do is we can click on this sequence flow. The sequence flow are the arrows, and we can roll back to it. So essentially, this is a really, really useful feature for testing, because it allows you to, an element that's already happened, you can roll back the whole process diagram to that element and restart from there. So if I roll back to the sequence flow and hit roll back, we can see it's failed again, which makes sense because it's not correctly configured. But now that it's rolled back and restarted, this data can has started working. We can see that because it's green, and it's actually got an output for Frank Sinatra. So now what we want to do is we want to put his email into this service task, and it's exactly the same thing. We don't want to hard code it in. We want to reference it dynamically. So we can click on string here, again, the data type, and we can see that it copies to the clipboard in the bottom right. And then what we can do is we can go over here and we can configure it. So who are we sending it to? We're sending it to this email over here. So now this will send an email to that address. Now, if I go to Outlook, I just want to open this up. I should just be logged in. Oh, sorry, guys. Let me just sign in. I might just do this off screen if that works. I'll open that completely in a second. On the screen. What's that?
Just put your password manager onto the screen. There's no problem.
Yeah, no problem there. All right. All right. So now it's going to send an email to that email address. And then what we can do is we can do the subject in the body of the email as well. Now, this is going to be in HTML format. Now, HTML format, if you don't know how to do it, it doesn't take too long to learn. But the thing is that would be really annoying if that was the only thing we did. We also got integrations with SendGrid. So SendGrid is a way to send emails. And then essentially what you can do is you can design it all on SendGrid and then choose the template that you want and then fill in all the details there. So that essentially means you don't have to do your manual HTML coding or whatnot. You can just integrate it with SendGrid. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to manually hard code the HTML because it's sort of outside the purview of this training to show you guys how to set up SendGrid and all that sort of stuff as well. So now the next question is, what should we put in for the subject? And again, what we can do is we can, for example, just put something in simple such as, we have received your request. And if I knew how to spell, that would be better. And then for the body, what I'll do is I've actually created a little bit of HTML here that I can just copy and paste in rather than showing you guys all the way through. But essentially, this is the HTML here. So this will say hi, and then what do we want it to say? We want it to say their first name. And the way I got this tag here is I went to the lead and I went workflow output and I went to their first name, and then I clicked on the string, and then it copied to the clipboard, and then I went back to the element, and then I said hi, and then pasted it in, and then so this is going to say hi Frank. Okay, and now the next thing is BR, that just means a line break. So it just means enter is another way of putting it. Because, for example, if you just do all these enters, it won't actually show up because it's a HTML email. And then the other thing is, thank you for taking the time to reach out to us. One of our friendly sales staff will be in contact with you in the coming days. Another line break. Please see the details of your request here. And then 2 more line breaks. Then we got first name. And then so it just repeats the information they put into the form so that they also have a record of the form that they submitted. And so for first name, it's got the first name as well, which, as you'll see, this is exactly the same reference as this one up here because they're both referencing the first name. And I did exactly the same thing for last name. I did exactly the same thing for email and the same thing for mobile and lead submission. These B's over here, that's just me bolding it so that when I get the email, it will actually be in bold. All right, now just give me a moment to quickly sign into this email address so that I can show you guys the email that will come through doing this. And again, this is just a very simple, HTML email that I've designed there, but you can design way fancier ones with all of your company branding and whatnot in SendGrid, and then we can integrate with that. So if we save all this, make sure all of this is correct, we have all the information, looks correct at first glance for me. There's one way to find out, and that's to roll back, and then it'll try and re-execute that element, and we can see that it's gone green there, which means it has successfully sent, so completed. So if I go over here, look, I've just received this at 11:27. Hi, Frank. Thank you for taking the time to reach out to us. One of our friendly staff will be in contact in the coming days. Please see the details of your request here. And we can see that all of the different elements of the request are there. And we can also see kind regards the Acme Corp sales team. So look, they've got their submission done. That's awesome. Now, we also wanted to set a task for the sales team to actually contact the lead so we can follow it up. We don't just want to send them a confirmation email and do nothing. So what we can do is we can actually put in an element here. So this is what's called a gateway. Any of these diamond-shaped elements are gateways. This one's an exclusive gateway. We don't actually want to be using an exclusive gateway in this case. We want to be using a parallel gateway. And I'll explain what this means in just a moment. So let me just make some room. I'm going to put the parallel gateway in just over here. What a parallel gateway means is as the token goes down this path, it will then send a token down all other paths connected to it. So what I can do is I can add in a user task just by clicking on it, pressing the user task one. And so that means a token will go down this path and send the email and then finish. And that token then is deleted as soon as it hits the end event, it's done. But then another token will, at the same time, will travel down this path and then hit this user task. And this user task is for the sales team to contact lead. Or we can say contact new lead is probably more specific. Cool. And what we can do is we can just hit an end event at the end here as well. And look, it shows you when you're lining up with other elements, so you can make it look all pretty as well if you're more of an aesthetic person. All right. So now if we roll back, if we roll back to this sequence flow here, roll back. Now what's going to happen is number one, you can hear all that dinging because that's me getting this email because we rolled back, it sent this email again. But we can also see that another token got generated and started traveling down this sequence flow to this user task. And so this will actually create, if we go over to tasks, task portal, it just created this contact new lead task over here. And so essentially that's just been created there. But this is not really configured well because no one's assigned to it or anything like that. And what we want is we want to make sure it's configured correctly. And we can even configure it so that the task will also send an email to the sales team to make sure that they're notified, number one, in Rapid, and then also by email. Obviously, these are optional. You don't have to be notified by email, but it's just showing you guys the different things we can do in workflow. All right. So what we can do is we can do the task there, and the title's contact new lead. It automatically grabbed it from me titling the element over here. And then what we can do is we can also put in a description here as well. So I've just copied and pasted this description because I made it up earlier. And this is the description that will appear on the task. So, hi sales team, a new lead has been created. It is your responsibility to reach out to this lead and determine if they are a potential account / opportunity. Now, if we leave this as 000, the start date will be just when it gets created. But what we want to do is we probably also want to make a due date. So let's just say in the company policy is within 2 days, the lead is contacted. And so we want this task to be due within 2 days. And you can just easily manage that over here in the due section. Now, who do we want to assign this to? We want to assign it to the sales team. So I've already made up a role in the system called sales team. And this user that I am at the moment, which is the automation user, is a member of that role. So it could also be, and you can have multiple members of a specific role. So for example, your whole sales team could be comprised of 5 different people. All people are part of that sales team. So if you assign the task to that sales team, it essentially assigns the task to all the members of the sales team. So when they go to their various task dashboards, in Rapid, they'll be able to see all the different members of the sales team. All right, so it's due in 2 days. It's assigned to the sales team. Is there anything else we want to do here? We might also want to connect the item. So we got the lead item. When they get the task, we want a way for them to be able to go from the task that they're viewing to the lead. Otherwise, they're just kind of stuck there and they might have to try and navigate to it or find out the most recently created one. And there's 2 ways. You can do it as a linked item or you can do it as form details. I prefer form details because it essentially, the way it displays on the task is a bit nicer and easier to use. So I'm just going to configure that and show you guys how to do that. So in form details, we can use existing because we're not creating a new lead. We're actually referencing an existing lead. So you go use existing, and from which table is it? It's from the leads table. Now, the other thing I'm going to copy first, because I know it's going to ask for this, is I'm going to copy the lead ID. So I'm going to copy the lead ID from here by clicking again on INT, which copies the dynamic reference to the lead ID. And then I'm going to then go back here and configure the form details, use existing, and then which table, it's from leads. And the item, the lead item I want to link is this lead item. So this is lead 5 in this workflow, but obviously the next workflow, it will probably be lead 6 if it's going up in sequence like that. All right. Now, we can show various different pieces of information. I don't necessarily want them to edit the information of the lead on this. I just want them to be able to see the lead's name and then to be able to navigate to the lead from the task item. And so I can just do this one, and I know that they're not going to be able to edit it because this is a system field. Again, remember we said it's generated from the first name and last name, so they can't edit this. So then we can save that. Now I'm just going to save my workflow because it's important to press save as many times as you can. And then after that, what we can do is we can look down here. We won't do the communication yet. I'll just show you guys what that looks like. So if we go here and roll back to the sequence flow, what will happen is it won't send another email because it's just rolling back to this one, and it'll generate another task because we've just rolled it back. So let's go check out the tasks list. Let's refresh that. And we've got the contact new lead this time, and it actually shows it's also assigned to the sales team, which is good. And if we click into it, it actually has the description here. So a new lead has been created. It is your responsibility to reach out to this lead and determine if they are a potential account or opportunity. And we can see the lead details here. So this is the full name, Frank Sinatra. And then for them to get to the lead, they can just click on that button. Now they're in the lead and they can do whatever notes or change the status or change whatever they want over here. And they can easily go back to the task by using the breadcrumbs at the top. And they can go back to contact new lead. Okay, let's set up an email because maybe not everyone's logging into Rapid every day. So we want to set up an email as well. To set up the email, we can do the from and to the to. So what we're going to do is I'll just copy in the email. So it's going to be from my automation user to my automation user. Obviously, you guys, just for the purposes of this, that's why I'm doing this for the demonstration. But obviously, you'd probably want it from like a no reply account. And then the to, you can have like a shared mailbox maybe for your sales team, or if it's a group of people, have a shared mailbox. Or alternatively, we can actually put in the logic that you can have multiple email addresses in here as long as they're comma separated. And so this is a blank Rapid site. So in other words, this is a pretty blank site, but you can have, for example, the workflow will look at the sales team, grab all of the member emails associated with the sales team, and then automatically put it in all of them over here as a comma separated list. So then you can send it to multiple people if there's multiple people in the sales team. Again, it's definitely possible. I'm not going to show it for the purposes of this. And then what we can do is we can do the subject of the email. And so what we can do is new lead created, and we can even put the lead name in. So we can put the lead first name in there. And so when they get the email, it will say new lead created and then Frank. And now for the body of the email, we can copy a lot of the stuff we use for the other one because again, what we want is we want it to be able to link. It's pretty much showing the same information, if that makes sense. So we want to show the first name, last name, email, mobile, additional details, etc. So again, I've already made up the HTML for that. And so what it's going to say is, hi, sales team. A new lead has been created in the system. It is your responsibility to contact this new lead. Please see the details of the new lead here. And again, it's all the same stuff, first name, last name, email, mobile, and whatever additional details they put in. But then it's got this last section, which if you know HTML, this is what's called an anchor tag. And essentially what it does is it links the word lead to the item. So what I've done here is I've put in the website address of this person's Rapid site, and then I've dynamically put in the ID at the end here. So when they click on lead, it will take them directly to that item in their Rapid site. Again, if you want me to go into more detail about this, send me a message and I'm happy to outline this in a bit more detail. But you can also look this up. This is just HTML anchor tags as well. All right, let's save that. We've configured this email as well now. Make sure it's all looking good, sweet. And now if we roll back over here, what we have is we've got that email. Sorry, you guys can't see it, I know, but the team's banner at the top is overlaying my tabs, which makes it quite hard to click the banner. And we can see that if we click on this, it will take us to lead 5, which is Frank Sinatra. And so that's a dynamically generated URL there. Again, just showing you guys what's possible. And it did send the email as expected, hi sales team, with all the details and the link to the lead, which is cool. Now I know that Michael was mentioning before that a big part of why he decided to choose to go with Rapid is for the form generation. And with these tasks, you can actually attach them to an adaptive form. And so you can actually send forms out to people by setting up this task and having an email, and then they can have exactly the same thing where they receive an email, please complete this form, and you can even set it up on SendGrid where it's got a really nice button. They click on the button and it'll open up the form. They can complete the form and then it'll progress the workflow. So I don't know whether that's going to be useful to you guys, but it's just something else that you can do using Rapid. All right, so keep going down. So this is pretty much done here. So now what we want to do is we want to build in the logic. So what happens if they do this task and then the lead was non-contactable, and then they want essentially to loop it back to this task in a week or so? We can actually do that as well. So what we want to do is we're going to use what's called an exclusive gateway this time. An exclusive gateway differs from a parallel gateway in that the token can only go down one path as opposed to all the paths that come out of it. So what we want to have is we want to have one path, which is it ends. In other words, they were able to make contact and then the process ends. And then the other path that we want to have is we want it to loop back on itself if they weren't able to be contacted based on some sort of logic. So what we can do here is I'm clicking on this and it pops up what I can add to it. And so this is an intermediate boundary event. And then I can click on the spanner over here, and then I can do what's called a timer intermediate catch event. And what a timer intermediate catch event is, essentially it's a timer. So if the token hits this timer, it will stop on the timer for the amount of time that we program the timer for, and then it will continue once that's finished. So what I can do is I can connect this timer. Let's connect that up to here. And so this is overlapping, but we can make it look a bit nicer. So let's actually drag this down. And so this tool that I'm using, where you can like drag elements and position them a lot easier, is just on the left over here. And it's just called the create remove space tool. And so that just allows you to create and move things around to make things a bit neater. All right, so we've got this contact new lead and it hits this timer and then comes back. But the first thing the token's going to touch once this task is complete is the exclusive gateway. So we should probably configure what's going to happen there. So if I run this now, if I complete this task now, it will hit this gateway and fail because there's no logic for the token to continue down any path, which means it's in an errored state because the token has to continue. So what you can do is you can do what's called a default path. So in other words, you can see that this is the default path because it's got the slash on it. To make this the default path, I just clicked on the sequence flow and then I just clicked on the spanner and that made it the default path. So if I ran this now, what would happen is every single time it would go down this path here because there's no logic configured on this other path. So let's configure that logic. So if we look at our leads item, so this is the task item. If we look at our leads item, we can see that we've got statuses. So we've got the statuses up here, but we've also got the statuses over here. And so pretty much we can build up the logic for every single one, but we're just going to say that if it's being contacted, it's either going to be contacted, nurtured, converted, disqualified, or unresponsive. So if it's not new, essentially we're assuming that this lead has been contacted. So what we can do is we can say that if this, so we can click on here and we can see all the outgoing connections. So it highlights them and we can add a rule to this sequence flow, which is the one going from the exclusive gateway to the timer. We can add a rule there. And so we can say that if the lead and if the status of the lead is equal to new, then we want it to re-go around and we want to try and contact that person again. And I can just type in new there. So lead status is equal to new. And then we can save that. So now this exclusive gateway has been configured. And the next thing to do is we want to configure the timer. So let's just say the company policy is 1 week. So that means that this will then take a week for this timer. The token will hit this, it'll wait a week, and then it'll create a new task for the sales team to contact the lead. And this will keep looping until the status has been changed from new to anything else. Now, what you can do, so over here, we've got some easy to use sort of things to add time to it, but we can actually put in some custom logic here using Lodash, which is essentially JavaScript. And you can put in whatever custom logic you want into the timer. If you want it to only be on Thursdays or anything like that, you can do that. And we do have the ability to do that, but it just means you probably have to put in some more complex logic into this box over here. But at the moment, we just want 1 week. We want to keep things simple. So then we can save that and we know that this is all saved. So now a problem here is that I haven't labeled my diagram. So generally speaking, anytime you have an exclusive gateway, we want to say what the gateway is actually asking. So you ask a simple question. So I click on the gateway, I press the letter E, and that lets me label it. So was the lead contacted? Question mark. And if the lead was contacted, yes, it goes down this path. And if it was not, no, it goes down this path. Again, this labeling has nothing to do with the actual functionality. It's just so we can read it easier because we've already configured the functionality, but now it's easy. Was the lead contacted? No. Okay, it starts again. Now this timer, we can label that as well as 1 week. And again, this is just so that when you look at the BPMN diagram, you can read it easily. Oh, I see a hand up. Michael, what's the
Just being
question?
polite. Just a theoretical, I don't need you to demonstrate it, but we could use this to easily escalate an issue too if, for example, someone was notified you hadn't done this task, go around. You could then go to another one saying, if it's not done within 2 or 3 notifications, send it up to another level of management.
Yeah, so that's
something
actually
programming quite easy. Yep.
Yeah,
Cool.
so we've actually got that built in. There's actually an easy way to do that. And I might just do this to the side quickly. So we can configure this as a user task.
Yep.
And then what we can do is we can put on one of these and actually put it on the boundary.
Fantastic.
And so what this means is we can configure this as a timer.
Escalation boundary event, timer boundary event. Yeah, okay, that's fantastic.
And so essentially what this means, so this is an interrupting one I've done. So if this task is not complete within 2 days, you can then trigger whatever you want to come off it. So we can then trigger, it then does this way. But if the task is completed within 2 days, then it might just end that little process there. So you can definitely do that. You can have interrupting and non-interrupting. A non-interrupting means that it will trigger this to go on, but the task will still be ready to go and can still continue in the process as well. So that logic's built in as well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
No, that's all good. Cool. All right. So it loops back. Where was I? Okay. So it loops back around. Let's give it a test. I'm pretty sure that's all configured there. So let's give it a test. We can refresh it and we can see where we're up to. So up to contact new lead. So I can actually open that task, which was task portal is going to be this one. So it's asking me to go into the lead. So we go in here and we want to contact the new lead. I tried to contact the lead today. However, they did not pick up. All right. And the reason why I'm leaving this note, so this is a note that I'm leaving on the lead now. And it's saying, okay, cool. On 24th of January, the user automation, or Tristan, because that's the user I'm logged in as, put this note on the lead. And now we've got a record of what happened. Now, I'm not changing the status because we don't need to, because it's still a new lead, because they haven't been contacted. It actually hasn't progressed. So I can go back to my task item, contact new lead, and I can complete it. And if we go back to the workflow, what we'll see happen is now it's progressed through, it hit the exclusive gateway. It's saying it is still a new lead. So we're going to progress down this path, and it's hit the timer. And so it's going to wait on that timer for a week. Now, you guys probably don't want to wait here for a week, so it's really good for testing. We've got this skip button, which will skip the timer, and then it'll instantly bring it back to the new lead there. All right. So now what we can do is we can see the contact new lead, and you just heard that email, because remember, we've got an email configured against it. And then so now what we can do is we can go over to our task portal. We can go to the newest task. Okay, this is a week later now, so I'm going back into the lead. And maybe what I want to do is I say, I tried to contact for a second time. They still did not pick up. Time to abandon lead. Obviously, generally, people won't just give up on the second time if you guys have ever dealt with salespeople, but let's just assume that now the lead is unresponsive, so we're going to abandon that lead. So now we can save and close this. If you do save and close, it will just bring you one step up in the breadcrumbs at the top. So that brings me back to the task. And now I can complete the task as well. And so if we go back to this, now what we can see is that it went down this path over here, down to the end event, and now the process is done. Because it wasn't a new lead anymore, it was now an unresponsive lead, so now we ended the event. We probably could tidy this up so this wording makes more sense, but again, it's still a demonstration. Now, the next thing, we might actually want to mark the lead with when it's been closed, when that lead has been closed, and we can do that as well. So what we can do is I'm just going to put, this is just a placeholder task. And so generally for placeholder tasks, I just do a manual task. And then what we can do is we can get this manual task to update the lead item with, for example, today's date, saying, hey, guess what? The lead's been closed on this date. So then we actually have a record if we want to do some Power BI reporting or whatnot, how long the lead was in the system as an active lead for. So for example, I'm just going to name this one. I'm going to name it update converted date. And then what we can do is, do you see this little arrow? We can do an arrow from this to the lead item, and this is what's called a data association. I can bring the lead item over here. And so now it's not crossing over or anything. That's more of an aesthetic thing. And I can start to configure this. This is what's called a data association. So essentially it means that, well, you can actually update the lead item, and it automatically reads the data can and reads that it's on the leads list. So that's how it already knows over here. And so what we can do is we can update a field. So we can go add new field, and I want to update the converted date. And now what value do I want to use? So over here, we need to put in an ISO string, which is essentially how the system, like the backend system, actually reads it. So how do we do that? Well, we can try and come up with that ourselves, or we can actually go to this table. So this is the docs, and explains a whole bunch of examples of ISO strings. And I just want to do now. So I don't really care. I don't want it to do tomorrow. I don't want to do another day. So we can actually just paste this in. And then what this will do is it'll give it today's date as an ISO string. And so it'll update the converted date with today's date. So what we can do is we can go back here. And again, any code that we put in has to be inside the Lodash tags, which is an open angle bracket %equals. And then we put in the code, and then we can do %angle brackets to close it. And then we can hit save. Now, the thing is, it's already ended over here. So what we can do is we can roll back to this section over here. And now if we go to this lead item, we will hopefully be able to see that the converted date, we go to the lead item, converted date has now been updated. So that was just updated. So that's good. I wonder if it's going to show on here, or whether this doesn't show because it's a system update modified by. No, so it doesn't show it because it's a system update, but that's fine. So this is our diagram more or less done. So this pretty much showed us the basics. It's more or less done. There's one thing I don't like about the diagram, and it's the fact that it's not as neat as I would like it. So generally speaking, what you would want to do is you want to start to put some swim lanes in. So this is just to tidy it up, and this is purely for aesthetics as well. So at the top, I usually put in my data cans are all in one of the swim lanes. So look, I can put my lead up here, and now he's nicely in this swim lane. The other swim lane, I'm going to actually do it as the lead person. So what's associated with them? Well, they triggered the lead. The person, in this case, Frank Sinatra, he triggered the whole process. So I'm going to put the start event with him. And then also we can put this one up here because it triggered it. And then the email, that was to Frank. And then also we can end it there. And then what we can label this one is we can label this one the sales team, because these are all the tasks associated with the sales team. And so now we can see each of these are in nice, neat categories. Again, it doesn't affect the functionality of the process. All it does is it changes how we can read it. So we can see everything's in this nice, neat category. So you can see everything associated with the lead, everything associated with the sales team, and everything associated with the data. So that's pretty much it. So we start, a lead creates, you create a new lead with this form here. That will create in the system. That'll trigger this process. It will send a confirmation email to the lead. It will then generate a task for the sales team. The sales team will then chase up the lead, and then it'll keep recreating the task until the sales lead has done it correctly. This will also send an email to the sales team saying, hey, here's the lead item if you haven't already checked. And then if the lead has been contacted, then it will update the lead with its the date that it was closed or changed from new. And then the process diagram will then end. Does anyone have any questions or anything like that? I know we're already up to 11:53, but that's pretty much it from the from me showing how to use the workflow, at least the beginnings of it.
I'm all right. Do you have anything, Hartley?
No, it looks great.
Yeah.
Maybe sorry, Harley.
Maybe one quick question was, as we only set up tenant yesterday, do you know if we had the permissions included to send email on behalf of the user?
Yes, you do.
Great. Send grid was something I wanted to look at as well. And maybe if you could show me quickly how you could initiate a webhook.
Initiate a webhook?
Yeah.
So webhook, again, is just going to be So we can just, I'm just going to put it over here because now I can't do it outside of this. And then it's just going to be a service task. So if we do a service task, and then we can actually configure it where it's trigger a webhook, and then you just put the webhook address in here. And then you can configure a custom body in here, and this will be in the custom body of the webhook that you receive as well. So that's pretty easy to do. And you can choose your different post methods or whatnot. So if you're trying to make, what type of webhook, like what application are you trying to send it to?
Just looking if we want to send data to our Azure tenant, to like a data lake or something else, or
yeah, and would that be using Power Automate?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all fine. You can do it with Power Automate very, very easily.
The other thing is that if you are using Power Automate, we have a native Power Automate connector as well within the Power Automate store. And if you use that and you configure a trigger using the Rapid Platform connector, that will automatically talk to your site and register the webhook against it. And so it doesn't need to be in the context of a workflow itself. It will just be item gets created in Rapid, and that will automatically kick off the flow. And, Power Automate, you can send that data wherever you want at that point.
Right. That'll keep Mr. Chambers happy.
Yeah.
Yes. Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks.
The only other thing I can think of, Tristan, is maybe on the Explorer side, showing that process that we were looking at is now connected against that lead, and all the tasks that were generated were connected against that lead. So from a user's perspective, where would they go to actually see where the process is up to against that lead?
Sorry, Wojciech, Joel was just mentioning something to me, so I didn't quite get that last bit. What was that?
I was just mentioning it might be useful to show the Explorer side again to see that process is linked against that lead and all the tasks that were generated against that lead as well.
Yes, let's do that. So
because
okay, cool. That's all good. So to navigate to Explorer, it's pretty easy. So we were just in workflow to navigate to Explorer. In the bottom left, we can see the little button here, and if you hover over it, it says Explorer. Awesome. So now what we can do is we can go to that lead, we can open the lead, and we can see if we go over here. So this is the process run that it's recorded against. So if we actually open that lead, we can actually go directly to this process run and see whether it's successful or not. But then another thing is we can see all of the tasks. So if I open this lead again, we can see all of the tasks that have been created in that process run are now connected directly to the lead. Even the ones that we didn't, even the ones at the start, is every time we rolled back, remember, it created a new task. So that's why we see 5 tasks here. So all of those are connected to the lead. So what this means, if you decide to extend the process to have, I don't know, 10 or 15 different tasks, depending on all your different lead channels and how you decide to manage those, all of those tasks will then be reflected back on the lead, and you can do all your different reporting as to exactly which stage in the process the lead was, and you have all your documentation as well, and it's all connected together.